Welcome to the Feeling Better podcast. My name is Maria, and I'm the host of this podcast and the author of the book, The Feeling Better 10-4 program, that teaches you a practical, effective, and inspirational 10-week program to help you overcome your compulsive gambling addiction. Thank you for being here. If you signed up for my newsletter, you probably received a survey questionnaire with me asking your opinion about a spin-off podcast. I haven't fully decided on this yet. I'm considering launching a new podcast specifically for women's issues regarding spiritual attack, addiction, self-worth and mental health, relationship issues, home life struggles, and other topics pertaining to spiritual wellness from a Christian perspective. And I came up with this because I'd been receiving some emails lately, primarily from women who are struggling with mental and spiritual health as they continue on their gambling addiction recovery journey. And I know I've been deviating a little bit lately from the gambling addiction topics, diving more into the Christian spiritual stuff. So I thought it might be helpful to do a spin-off podcast for women specifically to address that. But running and recording and uploading a podcast is time consuming, and I'm just not sure if I have the bandwidth for it. It's just an idea that I'm tossing around. I'm actively interviewing for some jobs, and I've had some second and third round interviews this week that went okay. Can I just talk for a second about the job interview process? I don't know how many of you out there are professionals who go through complex interviews, but it's a little ridiculous. Honestly, there needs to be a complete overhaul of the interview process. I'm going to rant about that for just a second because that's the struggle I'm dealing with this week. So I've had 5 or 6 different interviews, and 4 of them I had second rounds. So in my industry, with what I do in sales, it's at least 3 rounds of interviews, sometimes 4. And it starts off with a screening from either the recruiter or the HR person that just gives you an overview of the job description and goes through your resume and determines if there's a match so that they can send you on to the second round when you would interview with, usually it's a low-level manager or sometimes a colleague that would be on your team. And then from there, you would interview with the hiring manager. And then the last step, if there is one, is typically like a panel or you meet with a C-suite executive, head of sales of some sort, whatever. So anyways, I've had these interviews and every single one of them was just kind of bizarre. One of them interviewed me quite in depth and really liked my resume and my background. And we were chatting about the sales role and going deep into what they were expecting and my background. And the salary and everything matched up with my expectations. And then at the end, they asked, "Do you have any questions for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just curious. Can you tell me more about, is there a territory, or is this a new role? And where would I be covering? What would the geography be?" And this person that I was interviewing with, who was a manager, this was the second round, came back and was like, "Oh, yeah, the territory is the tri-state New York territory, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And we'd want you to do some traveling there." And I was just like, I'm in Michigan, right? And so then they were like, "Yeah, well, your background fit and the HR gal liked your resume and it wouldn't be out of the question for you to travel there, but, you would have to go meet customers." I finally, at the end, I was like, "I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for the interview. And I'm happy to have learned about your company and the role. And if there is another job opening that meets my geographic criteria a little bit better down the road, please let me know." But I just don't see how it would be effective or cost efficient for you as a company to continuously send me over to the East Coast, nor do I want to be traveling like that throughout Manhattan and New York and New Jersey and Connecticut to meet with customers, constantly flying. It's one thing if, I'd mentioned that I had one interview that would be a lot of travel. That one never went anywhere. I don't know. They just never called me back, and that was okay because I wasn't feeling good about it. But I'm okay with some travel. It just needs to make sense, right? And to just be a road warrior in a geography that's not even mine And to fly in and out and like rent a car or I don't know, take the subway, I just, no, thank you. So I pulled out of that one. And then I had another one that was a little bit crazy where I interviewed with this guy, this company, and the HR guy was really great. And he went through my background, went through my resume, and then he's like, well, the next step would be to meet with the hiring manager. And he gave me her name. And doing my due diligence, I was going to look her up on LinkedIn. And he said, so, but she's pretty tough. She's going to have some high expectations. And I said, well, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. I'm good with that. But what is the salary for this position? He's like, yeah, I don't really have that exactly. You see, we did a restructuring back in March where we let some people go. And now we're just hiring on one position to kind of handle everything. And that threw up a red flag for me because I'm thinking, okay, you let go of a bunch of people back in March and now you're just hiring one person and you don't know the salary. And so I said, okay, do you have any information about maybe what the commission structure might be? Because this is a sales role, or what the average deal size is and what the quotas are, the sales goals that I'd be expected to meet while I'm in this role. And he's like, yeah, I don't have that. I'm going to have to get back to you. So then he's like, but I'm going to go ahead and schedule the second interview with you and maybe you can find out then. Okay. All right, fine. I can't be too choosy at this point. So we hang up and then I go on to LinkedIn to check out this woman. It's a woman, who would be the hiring manager, my manager, to look at her post. And she, in a very polite way, I guess I could say she's a very aggressive bulldog when it comes to sales. She's very knowledgeable and very connected, but she's younger and just a real go-getter, which is great. I give her total props for that. But she's one of these super intense people. And I saw some posts that she had made on LinkedIn about like all these metrics that she would monitor with her rep, calls and pipeline and things like that. That's to be expected. But she had a whole list of 8 or 10 different metrics that she keeps track of. Metrics are stats. So different things that you do throughout the week. How many meetings, what's your email rate, what's your call rate, how many social media posts and how many things have you added to your pipeline. And anyway, so it's this huge long list, 8 or 10 different things. And then I saw a post that she had made where she said, I expect my interviewees to show up being prepared. That means conducting calls with different colleagues within my company to find out who we are, what we do, and to get a little background, and putting together a presentation that really knocks it out of the park in order to set themselves apart from all the other candidates. I was just like, yeah. First of all, I am not the boiler room type of salesperson. I've said this before that I'm an introvert, right? So I like to listen. And that means I like to have conversations with people and I like to ask questions. And so I'm consultative in nature. I am there to help solve a problem and to see if the product or service that I represent can fix that problem and meets a need. And I'm not out there pitching. Like if you ever, some of you younger people might not know what boiler room means, but it's a very aggressive sales style, kind of like used car salesman, Wolf of Wall Street sort of thing. Anyways, that's not me. So I emailed this HR guy back and said, I'm going to politely withdraw my application for this position because I happened to look at the hiring manager's posts on LinkedIn, especially the one that said she expects interviewees to come prepared and to have done all the due diligence of making calls and setting up conversations with colleagues and putting together a presentation. And I wasn't even able to glean what the salary was for this job. So, to be honest with you, this is not an audition, right? This is not American Idol. I'm not up here to show off and set myself apart from all the others solely to win the spot. An interview is also a process for me to determine if the company is a match for my background, my skills, my personality, and also a good culture fit, right? It's a match. It's a marrying of two entities, an organization and an employee, potential employee. So I just sent that email off, trying to explain that I understand there are a lot of unemployed people out there, and a lot of them are vying for jobs, and that you need to stand out above the rest, right? I have no issue with that. And I have done interviews where I've conducted research ahead of time or done presentations. In fact, there was one interview I did years ago when I worked for a company where they actually flew me out to the headquarters to give a presentation in person. I don't have any problem with that. That's not the issue. The issue is they had zero information on their end as to what I would even get paid. So, I don't even know if this is even in my salary range or what I'm expecting or what I would want to earn. It could be way below, or maybe the goals are really high, or maybe they don't have a commission structure. I needed more information before I was going to put that much of my own personal time into the interview process. So anyway, the guy wrote me back. I think he thought that was pretty insightful of me to determine that piece of it, because I had also said, I don't think I would work very well with the manager. We have very different sales styles, and it sounds like my personality wouldn't be an exceptional fit for this role, or something like that. I'm a very chill person. I'm a very positive person. I like people, and I love building relationships with them, right? I make friends with the people that I sell to, and I want to establish a very trusting relationship with them. And I'm just, like I said, I'm not a shark, and she's wanting a shark. So I think he thought that was pretty insightful because he alluded to that. But anyway, so that one's out the window. And then I had another one where I had 2 rounds, and then the third round I met with the hiring manager, and we sat on a Zoom call for about a half hour, just talking, going through my resume, talking about the company, talking about the product. And it's not a great situation because they're a little outdated. They've got some strong competitors. They've been losing market share, and I don't really see how viable it would be going forward. Again, I'm not in a position to be picky, but still, it needs to be a good fit. I would like to be somewhere long term. I don't want to just be at a place for a year or two and then have it not work out. So I'm being really choosy. But so I'm on my side thinking to myself, yeah, I don't know if this is going to be a really great opportunity. But the hiring manager says to me at the end, yeah, I can't really get a feel for you or your personality or your sales style or skills, even though she had asked me like a good 10 questions that I had answered, I thought, pretty detailed. And she had my resume in front of her. When she said that, she's like, yeah, I don't think that I'm able to make any determination whether you would be a good fit or not. And maybe what I'll do is I'll schedule another time when we can meet and talk some more. And I was like, okay. I kind of already determined at that point, like, yeah, that's not going to be a winner for me either. So, yeah, these, and then the final one. This final one, there was another one where I had a Zoom interview, and this manager just was going on and on about how inclusive the company is and how respectful they are of people and how they're very pet friendly. And they must have mentioned about 4 times how they have 6 months maternity leave. We offer 6 months maternity leave. And if it's paternity leave, you get 4 months. Yeah, I'm almost 50, so that's not going to be of interest to me. And then she kept talking about how welcoming everyone, like it was the fluffiest interview call that I'd ever had. And so then I started asking like meaty questions, right? So how much does this make? How much is the salary for this? Oh, yeah, I'm going to have to check on that. I think it's around, oh, nope, that's not right. Oh, I thought I had it. No, I'm going to have to check and get back to you. For the love of Peter, is there any situation where I could have a call with the company where they actually know what they're going to pay for the role? It's bizarre. I give them everything about me. They know my entire background. I answer all their questions. And all I want to know is how much does this job pay? And 4 out of 6 of them couldn't tell me. And then the one that could tell me wanted me to go and travel in and around New York. So anyways, pray for me, please, that something comes up. I'm still on the hunt. So I don't even know where I was going with that. Oh, yeah, I was talking about this podcast. So, I got to pay the bills. I have to get a job. I'm going to be working full time. Onboarding with a new place is always really, really time consuming. But I'm thinking about this idea for a podcast, and it might be something that I start up in the winter time. So if you got an email from me, if you're registered or if you signed up for my newsletter, you got an email with a link to the survey. It's super easy and quick. There are only 4 questions. I'm just picking your brain about what you think about a women's Christian podcast addressing spiritual attack and mental health and all of that good stuff. If you didn't get the email and you're not signed up for my newsletter, I will put a link to the survey in my show notes of this episode so that you can take it if you want. If you want to give me your opinion on it, I would really appreciate that. So anyways, today we're going to talk about the struggle of temptation. And I don't really have a ton of notes. I've got some notes, but I'm just kind of free-forming this. Believe it or not, there are some people in this world that don't struggle with temptation. There aren't. And here's the twist to that statement. They actually do, but they don't recognize it as temptation. They just give into it. So there's some scripture that speaks to this. Paul in Romans 7 talks about this in a way that we all can understand. This is one of my favorite verses because it reminds us that even the apostles were real people too. Paul in Romans 7, in verse 7, I'm going to read this to you. He says, "What shall we say then? Is the law sinful? Certainly not. Nevertheless, I would not have known what sin was had it not been for the law. For I would not have known what coveting really was if the law had not said, 'You shall not covet.' But sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, produced in me every kind of coveting. For apart from the law, sin was dead. Once I was alive apart from the law. But when the commandment came, sin sprang to life and I died." So what Paul is saying there is if you don't know the law, if you don't know the 10 commandments, or you don't know what God's expecting of you, or you don't have any understanding of what God's law is for mankind, then you don't have any care about it whatsoever. Now, those of us who are Christ believers, we are cleansed by his blood. Our sins don't count against us. But what Paul's saying here is, yeah, they don't count against us, but they are what calibrates our moral compass. And so when I am about to sin, I recognize it as sin because the law has suddenly been illuminated for me. Yeah, my sins are forgiven. And when I was alive, living apart from the law, not caring about the law, I was good. But when I was saved, I understand now what sin is. Sin sprang to life, he said. Verse 10, "I found that the very commandment that was intended to bring life actually brought death." So that means back in Moses' time, God gave mankind these commandments, right? Because you had to be pure and clean and holy and sin-free to get to heaven, because heaven is holy and sin-free. Think of it like a sterile hospital room, okay? This is a weird analogy, but God lives in this sterile but beautiful and amazing paradise, heaven, right? Where God lives. So that has no sin whatsoever. So think about it like germs. It's a perfect analogy. Sin is germs, and God has no germs where he lives. God's heaven is germless, completely sterile. And you can't enter heaven if you have germs. So it's like You can't walk into an operating room with your dirty shoes and your muddy clothes from working outside all day and not having washed your hands or put on a gown or anything. Why do you think doctors scrub up so well and they put all that disinfectant soap on and then they put the gloves on and they don't touch anything because it has to be sterile as they go into the operating room to operate? Back in the day before Christ, God gave mankind the commandments and said, here's how you can be sterile. This is how you can be clean to enter into my kingdom. But mankind couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. Nobody could do it. Sin had just infiltrated humanity too much. Everyone was grimy and dirty and full of germs. So then that's when God sent us Jesus, so that we wouldn't have to try. So it wouldn't be our efforts. It would be God's love, his love for humanity saying, okay, I know you humans can't do it. I know you can't. I understand that. It's just impossible. So I'm going to send my son, who is sinless, to come down and be the sacrifice, the offering, because that's how they used to do it back in the day. When they sinned, when they didn't follow the commandments, they would give an offering to God, usually an animal sacrifice. Now remember, these are really, really old days. These are ancient times. So that was something that everybody was able to do. Everybody could find an animal and sacrifice it, right? And that was just a physical outward way of saying, I'm sorry, God, I messed up, Lord. Here is my apology to you. It was the act of doing that was repenting to God, saying, I'm sorry. So then God sent Jesus as a sin offering for everyone so that we don't have to do that anymore. Does that make sense? So I'm going to skip down to verse 14. And I think every single person who listens to this episode is going to so identify with what Paul says here. He goes on and says, we know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. As it is no longer I myself who do it, but it is sin living in me. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do. This I keep on doing. Now, if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me that does it. So you can see Paul's struggle with sin. Paul, the most prolific writer of the entire Bible, who wrote most of the New Testament, who is to this day an important figure in Christianity, he struggled with sin. And what he's saying is no one is good, not a single person, even little kids and babies. I mean, have you ever seen, you probably have kids and have seen this a million times in person, but there are videos or reels out there where maybe you've seen your own child or niece or nephew, little baby, like little kid, toddler. Did you eat that? No. And they've got chocolate all over their mouth. Immediately they start lying. Or you've seen little babies, that are not even old enough to walk, snatch a toy and steal it out of another baby's hand or something. That sin is inherent in us. We're born with it. And what Paul is saying is that it never leaves us. Because we're human, we have that in us and we fight it constantly. Constantly. When we know what we're supposed to be doing, we do the opposite. And that's our flesh, our sin that's doing it. And when we do it, our brain is saying, no, why did you do that? You shouldn't have done that. So your true moral compass that comes from knowing the law, from understanding what's right and wrong, that's battling constantly with your flesh, with your sin. Thank God for Jesus, right? Because again, he washes all of that away. He makes our record clear. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been struggling lately, not with gambling, but just, I think a good word to describe it is consistency, because I have found ever since I started gambling, well, that's not even true. Okay, long before I started gambling, probably since I turned 40, 41, whatever, 42, in my early 40s, I've really had a hard time with consistency. And some of that is just getting older. getting tireder, just taking on so much mentally. And I don't know, society, social media, all the politics in your face, all of the big issues in your face, it takes a toll on you. And I've just really been struggling with consistency. So like 2 weeks ago, I was walking every day at lunchtime or in the morning. I was eating really well, having just a smoothie in the middle of the day and maybe some scrambled eggs or cottage cheese or Greek yogurt a little bit later on. And I'd get up and I'd read my Bible, and because I'm unemployed, I'd spend some time applying to jobs, putting out applications, searching the job boards. Then I'd be productive and do some housework, which I love. I love doing housework. I love working in my garden. If I could just be domestic diva housewife for the rest of my life, that would be amazing. That's a dream come true. I mean, I'm not even joking. If I could spend my days cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, working in my garden, that would be heaven on earth. And I know my father would just crack up at that statement because I hated doing all that stuff as a kid, but it was forced on me. Now I appreciate it because it's my own home. Anyways, consistency. So I was doing that for, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, whatever, just every day, schedule. Even though I wasn't working, I had my own personal schedule. Then this week happened. I had one night that I didn't sleep good, and that made me groggy the next day. And that made me drink a lot of coffee, which made me dehydrated. But instead of drinking water, I ate and I snacked and I ate. And I even was eating like almonds, which I shouldn't be eating because of my diverticulitis. You know, nuts are not a good thing. And just haven't stopped eating. I don't know. Maybe it's a hormonal thing, but I was like losing some weight. I'd lost a good probably 10 pounds there. I was looking fit and thin and getting tan, getting some sun. And I remember just a week and a half ago, looking in the mirror and saying, "Oh, yeah, girl, keep it up. You're doing awesome." And now I can't stop. And I was out there earlier trying to wrangle up the chickens and put them in the chicken coop because they'd be in here pecking away and bothering me while I'm doing my podcast. And I was running after them because they were trying to escape me. They didn't want to go in just yet, but I was running, putting my arms out, herding my chickens. And I just felt so jiggly. And I was thinking to myself, Maria, what is going on? Why won't you stop eating? Go back to where you were before. And I knew I was going to be talking about this topic. And I thought to myself, why is it that I can't go more than a week being consistent in something that's disciplined or that's right for me or that's good for me, and I fall back into something that's bad for me? Why is that? I'm sure a lot of people out there can understand and relate. I don't know, maybe not. But anyways, that's what Paul says about that. So let's tie this into gambling. Just a warning for those of you that are still really struggling with gambling. There's going to be some trigger statements in what I talk about here going forward. So you're welcome to click off. I won't be offended, or just be aware. I'm trying not to be triggering, but I had to describe a couple of things. So anyways, the lure and temptation of playing slots online or placing a sports bet or going to the casino is something that every gambling addict struggles with. And the thing is, when you get a nudge in your head that you want to play as an addicted gambler, that nudge instantly goes into a form of tunnel vision, right? Where despite all your best intentions, you just give in to that temptation. I've seen that scenario just described dozens and dozens of times on Reddit or in emails that were sent to me, or even I myself experienced that back in the day when I was gambling. And we end up hating ourselves for it. Because most often, those temptations that we're giving into when we don't want to, when we're feeling those things that Paul felt, usually happen at the point where we recognize that we shouldn't be doing this and we don't want to do this, but yet we're doing it. And so we feel it in our guts. We feel it in our spirit, and it causes us to fall back into that cycle of self-loathing and regret. So last week, I got an email from a gal in Pennsylvania, and she was asking me about self-excluding, referring to my episode about self-excluding. And she says, I'm going to read this verbatim, I'm hoping you can help me. I don't understand it. I self-excluded from all the online apps just to fall into the trap of crypto casinos. I didn't even know how to use crypto, but after an hour of setting up accounts and a bit of trial and error, I was finally able to deposit, and immediately I lost it all. I didn't even get a win that was over $10. I'm sure they're not regulated, so they're rigged. On top of that, my bank flagged the transactions as suspicious and canceled my card to issue me a new one. So now I don't even have my debit card anymore. I guess this is a good thing, but I'm scared that when I get my new card, I'll go right back to gambling at those crypto casinos again, even though they have horrible payouts. Do you know how to self-exclude from crypto casinos? Yeah, so my answer to that is 2 parts. I honestly don't know how to exclude from crypto casinos. I don't even really know what those are, to be honest with you. I mean, I know there are casinos out there that use crypto, but I've never seen them. I don't want to see them. I don't want to know how they work. So if anyone has an answer to that, please email me. My email is maria@thefeelingbetter.com. But the second part to my answer is this. I know it sucks giving into temptation. If you feel awful afterwards and you've made yourself sick over it, and I'm not even talking about the money aspect of it, I'm just saying your inner spirit and recognizing that there's a spiritual battle taking place, that is you fighting with your flesh, just like Paul talked about, the exact same thing, knowing you shouldn't do something and doing it anyways, and then feeling bad because you want to do what's right, but you can't because your sin in your flesh prevent you from doing it and they make you do the wrong thing. Essentially, the devil tempted you and you gave in. The devil is the tempter. That's what it says in the Bible over and over. He's the one that tempts, not God. And like me, several months ago, back when I was gambling, you might feel that you're going to give in to this sort of thing over and over and over and over. But do you want to know something? You may not even notice this, but there are times, many times, I'm sure, when God actually gives you a way out of that temptation. It's likely that you didn't even know about it because I know I didn't at the time. You likely didn't know what it was or see it for what it was, but God was doing it. He was. I'm telling you, I know I didn't see it at the time either. I'm going to tell you about that in a second here, but He gives you a way out. There's a clue in your email, my dear friends, and I'm going to point that out in just a second, but I want to read some scripture here that specifically talks about that. I've mentioned this verse before. It comes from 1 Corinthians 10:12-13, and it says, "If you think that you're standing strong, be careful not to fall. The temptations in your life are no different than what others experience. And God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, He will show you a way out so that you can endure." At the time when I was gambling, or even at the beginning stages of when I was writing my book and recording my podcast, I didn't really understand what that meant. He will give you a way out. But looking back, I can totally see when God did that. But before I share that piece of it and tell you how that looks, I want you to understand that you are not the only one going through this. The temptations in your life are no different than what others experience, it says. That's something that you need to remember. You're not uniquely someone who gets tempted with addiction and keeps falling into it over and over. Millions and millions of people struggle with this. Some are able to break free of it once and for all, while others will fall into it over and over and over. But when you look at that verse, He says, God will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, He will show you a way out so you can endure. So I'm going to guess that many of you have actually had God give you a way out of your temptation, but you didn't even realize that's what it was. A way to escape it so that you can endure it. When you're trapped in Satan's dark pit, God throws down a ladder or 2 or 3 or many and shines a light down there so that you can climb your way out. But how many of us don't even look over in that direction or recognize it for what it is or even care that it's there, even if we see it. It's right in front of us and we don't even know it. And I know that because this happened to me. So let me give you a few real life examples of how this actually happened to me. I honestly didn't even see it for what it was, but now looking back, it's so clear. This is a true story. I remember this from back in late fall when I was kind of early on in my addiction, and I'd opened up a casino app to play and went to go make a deposit using PayPal. But my bank, God bless it, recognized that there was, an issue with all of these PayPal transactions happening multiple times a day, and they were coming out of my account, sometimes causing negative balances, which resulted in overdraft fees, and it was all bad. So they put a block on it. And when I went to go make a deposit using PayPal, I got an error. It wouldn't allow it. So that was one ladder that God threw down the dark pit for me, shined his light and said, come on up. I'm giving you a way out. Had I paused to think about what I was doing, why it wouldn't go through, and what I was about to do, I would have seen my escape, but I didn't. So I went to go get my debit card, only it wasn't in my wallet. And I had no idea why it wasn't in my wallet. It's always in my wallet. So I began frantically searching. I was digging through my purse. I was digging through my bedroom. I was going through my drawers. I'm just like, where would this thing be? Did I drop it somewhere? I mean, I tore apart like for a half hour, just went through everything. So guess what? Not finding my debit card was another ladder that God threw down the dark pit and yet another light, making it even brighter. Come on, Maria. Come on out of there. Come on. I'm holding out my hands. Come on out. But no, I didn't do it. I didn't see it. I didn't know it for what it was. I was stubborn. My flesh and my sin were even more stubborn, and I refused to climb out of the deep pit. Half hour of going through all my stuff, I stopped and thought, okay, when did I use that card last? And then I remembered when I was coming home from the grocery store the weekend before, I stopped and got gas. And the pump had a sign on saying that the pay at the pump was broken, that you had to go inside. So I just took my card, left my wallet, left my purse, whatever, went inside and paid inside, and then stuck it in my pocket of my pants while I was pumping gas and never put it back in my wallet. Aha. So I went over to the hamper to look for the sweats. They were sweatpants. Don't judge me. It was cold, and being a little bit of a problem gambler, I didn't really care so much about how I looked or how I gussied up to go to the store, or sometimes even hygiene. So don't judge me. But anyways, so I'm digging through the hamper looking for those sweatpants. Then I was like, yeah, they were in the pile of laundry that I washed this morning. So I ran over. I'm telling you, this is a true story. I ran over to the laundry room, dug through the dryer, found the pants, didn't find the card in them, but I'm digging through and I see the card. I was like, oh. So I grabbed my card, took my phone, went to sit down, and I'm going to make a deposit. And I couldn't read the 3-digit code on the back. It had gotten washed off in the wash. Even the ink on the numbers had come off, but the numbers are still raised so you can still see them, but I couldn't see the 3-digit number on the back. And I was just sitting there trying to think of what it was. What was it? Was it 247, 249? Wait, was it 294? I mean, I didn't know, right? I didn't use my card. I didn't use it that much. At that point, I was only depositing using PayPal. Later, I would learn to memorize my number and write it down and, have a hard copy of it. But anyway, so that was another 3 ladders right in a row God put down in that dark pit where Satan's sitting there rubbing his hands with glee. And I am just not looking at where God's shining his light and holding out his hand, telling me to climb up. It's easy. Just stop right now. Just stop whatever you're doing. Turn, climb up the ladder and come out to me where it's safe. This is how you're going to resist that temptation. This is how you're going to endure that temptation. Come on up. I'm helping you. I'm giving you a way out. But I didn't take it. So at that point, it was like 45 minutes since I had first sat down to gamble. And God had thrown me all of those different ladders in my pit to give me a way out. And I just couldn't see it. I was so hyper focused on depositing so I could play that I ignored all of that. I didn't see that for what it was. But now it's so crazy. I can look back and see what it was. And I just shake my head. Like if I just would have put my phone down and thought to myself, Maria, if you find a way to deposit and play, you're going to lose it and you're going to be in some big trouble. And God's telling you, He's nudging you, He's giving you some signs, He's helping you, He's giving you a way out. He's trying to block that process and you keep shoving Him out of the way, knocking down those ladders and saying, nope, I got this. I'm good. I can do this. I know what I'm doing, right? Playing in the devil's pit. Oh my gosh, so bad. Anyways, my ACH VIP e-check thing, whatever, was all depleted, so I didn't have that. And finally, I'd figured out a way to add money to my PayPal account because my debit card was already linked there. I didn't need to put the number in again, and I could add money to my PayPal balance. And so anyways, I deposited. I finally managed to deposit and continue playing. And I distinctly remember finally just like, oh my gosh, I don't know, it was a couple of $100, $300, whatever it was. And I just lost it all. Of course I lost it all. And after that, just thinking, why did I do that? And God, just like, are you serious right now? So going back to this gal's email, I'm going to show you her ladders. For one, she self-excluded from the regular casinos. That is always, always a way out. Always, people. Self-exclude, self-exclude, self-exclude. That was her first way out of temptation. But when the devil put a thought in her head that she needed to try out a crypto casino, she had no idea even how to use crypto, or so she said in her email. So my guess is she had to figure it out, registering with an exchange in order to buy it first. Now, I've bought crypto back in the day, like 6-7 years ago, so I'm sure it's a little bit easier now than it was then, but I'm guessing it's still not a piece of cake. And she had mentioned trial and error. So that was another one of God's lifelines, one of His escape hatches, His ladder that He threw down there for her, that it was difficult. It was time consuming. It required trial and error in order to figure out how to even use that casino. And then she lost her deposit, she said, without even getting a win over $10. And now she's concerned about that temptation again. So I'm just wondering if any of you have ever had the thought, or if it ever occurred to you, that losing your deposit or not winning anything is actually one of those ladders that God is throwing down to you. And I say that because nearly all of the times that I self-excluded from an app, I did so because I lost big or reversed a withdrawal, then lost it. It was always a huge loss that prompted me to self-exclude, not a huge win, right? And I know there are people like you who do the same thing. I saw it on Reddit even just the other day where one guy said, hey, I self-excluded because I lost big and was really mad. And I'm like, yeah, I totally get that. I've been there. But on top of this gal's loss, her bank also flagged the transaction as suspicious and canceled her debit card. So that's yet another way, another escape, another ladder from God. So my problem gambling friends, can you think back on a time or a moment or a situation when something prevented you from depositing or playing or maybe even interrupted your play? There was another time I remember, this was like November-ish. It hadn't snowed. Or it had snowed by then, but the snow was gone. There wasn't any snow on the ground. And I had reversed a smaller withdrawal, not a jackpot or anything. But I was so stupid and mad at myself that I needed to chase that loss. And my hubby had gone out hunting. And in my despair and my frustration, I went into the bedroom to lie down and logged into the app and was like, I'm going to get this back. I don't care what it costs me. Oh my gosh. Just thinking about that now, it's so wretched. But that was my thought back then. But no joke. As soon as I logged into the app, our power went out. I mean, I'm saying this now thinking, how could it be anything else but God, right? But I didn't see it that way then. I was just like,
I can't believe the power's out. There's not even any snow on the ground. There are no winds out there. What could possibly cause the power outage? And our internet was out, and we don't have cell service where we live, so I couldn't play just using like my cell data or anything. I have to have internet. Everything we do is on Wi-Fi. And so I was so mad. And I didn't see that was a huge escape hatch that God had flung open for me, like a big long ladder and a spotlight. Maria, come out of that pit. And I was just like, ugh. I didn't see it. I just refused to even acknowledge it. I just wanted to hang out in the devil's playground. And looking back, I'm just, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I couldn't see that. I can't believe I fell for that. I can't believe I was so stupid. But even Paul struggled with this. So in your life, if you're somebody that's still gambling or trying to quit, or if you're somebody who previously gambled and or quit and you've been able to stop and you've refrained and you're on your recovery journey, maybe you can think about a time when somebody came by your house or knocked on your door, or somebody called or texted you right as you're about to log in, or interrupting your play. Maybe you had a problem with the deposit on your card, or something got rejected, or your bank flagged something. I remember distinctly a couple times where I had credit cards, and several of the banks don't even allow casino transactions. Like my Capital One card wouldn't work. My Chase card wouldn't work. I don't know, there was another one that they wouldn't work. They just blocked the transaction completely. And so, you guys, that's a ladder that God's throwing down to you saying, hey, pause for a second, think about what you're doing. I'm not going to let this go through because I want you to take a minute. You need to chillax for a second and think about what you're going to do here. But we aren't puppets. God doesn't move our hands. He doesn't control our minds. He doesn't pull the strings from up in heaven, making us do this or that or this or that. We have free will. But He can nudge us and He can give us a way out. He can give us little signs. He can fill us with the Holy Spirit and the feeling that we know, like Paul says, we know right from wrong. I mean, I'm just thinking about now all the times when my hubby would come into the room and start telling me a story. Or when it would be kind of, sort of late-ish at night and he'd say, hey, do you want to just snuggle up on the couch and watch a movie? And I would just be like, oh, I totally want to, but I need to keep gambling. I want to keep gambling. And that was my flesh talking. And that was God using my beautiful husband, my loving, amazing husband, to help pull me out of that pit too. So, there was God, and He took my hubby and said, okay, you reach down your hand too, and together we're going to pull her out of this. I mean, when I think about that scenario and I put it into that perspective, it just makes me tear up, right? And so I just want to end this by saying that any of you who are really struggling, or who find themselves even after you've quit and you've got bet-free days, but you still find your mind going there, let me put this in perspective here for you, okay? There are people in this world, some of them are very, very influential, some of them are very, very wealthy, and they gave up their souls. They gave up their right in heaven to follow Satan. What Satan essentially did was say, I'm covering you in all of your sin, all of your sin. Like, you are as filthy can be. There's no way you're going to get into heaven, but that's okay, because down in my pit where you're going to spend eternity, it's all dirty down there. That's where sin lives. That's where sin loves. That's where sin grows. That's where sin sits for all of eternity, in anguish and suffering and self-loathing and regret and despair and depression and all of those feelings that you and I have felt while we were in the depths of our addiction. And I want you to understand that our temptation, this temptation with gambling, it might feel big,
but it's not that big. Not compared to some of these people who've done horrific things, right? There are child sex traffickers out there. There are devil worshipers out there. There are murderers out there. There are people who have blackmailed others. There are people that have extorted companies. There are people who have traded, weapons and arms and killed innocent people. You and I, we spent some money gambling, okay? And that sucks, but it's not something that we can't escape from. God gives us a way out of this addiction. If you're listening to me here on this episode, this is one of the big ladders that God is giving you, saying you can come out of this. You can get out of this. There is a way out of this. I am not going to give you more than you can endure. And so let me tell you, okay, friends, to walk over to the ladder and start climbing up it. Just get up on the first or second rung, meaning put the phone down, okay? If you, my friend in Pennsylvania, are getting a new debit card, then the first thing you do is you call up the bank and you tell them, I want a text confirmation of any transaction that happens outside of my state for me to approve first. Or I want a block on any transaction that looks suspicious. Be proactive. Take care of it. I don't know if there are any ways to self-exclude from crypto casinos. Shut down your crypto exchange accounts. Write to them and say, I want to shut down my account. You have to take that step. God is going to reach down and grab you and pull you up. And as you go up out of that pit, you'll breathe cleaner air. You will breathe fresher air. You will be comforted. You'll be safe in God's arms, and you'll be able to think clearer because you're not down there in that hellish, dark, confusing pit. And you'll be able to stop and say, okay, I don't want to do this. I don't want to deposit. I don't want to lose any more money. And so what are some things that I can do, practically do, to get out of this once and for all? Okay, so make a list. I'm a list girl. Pull out a pen and some paper. Pull out your notes app on your phone. I don't care how you do it, but make a list. What are the things you can do that would symbolically or metaphorically allow you to take that first step and start climbing up God's ladder? Okay? Cancel your cards, even if you have to cut up your debit card, even if you have to only rely on a credit card that won't accept casino transactions like a Chase card or a Capital One card or whatever. If you only deal in cash, some people have done that. I've read those stories. If that's what you need to do, you do it. Set up all of your bills so they're prepaid out of your accounts and then only deal with cash. Maybe you go and get rid of your smartphone. I'm serious. Remember, cast out, pull out, cut off whatever it is that causes you to sin. Maybe you get rid of your phone. Or one of the things that gamblers often use is they hand over their finances to their spouse or to their mom or to their dad or to their best friend or whatever, their grandmother, whatever. If you think that you're in trouble and that you're going to deposit, then hand over your finances to someone else. Make a list. Sit down and brainstorm. Sit down for a half hour and brainstorm all the ways that you can prevent yourself from gambling so that you don't lose any more money. Number 1, self-exclude from everything. Physical casino, online casino. Number 2, consider putting blocks on your cards or only working in cash. Number 3, hand over your finances to someone else to use. And whatever 4, 5, and 6 are, figure them out, brainstorm them. If it means turning off your internet at certain times of the day or putting Gamban or some other blocker on your phone, calling the 800 line and making sure that the state puts you on their self-exclusion list. Like there's a master list, right? That each state has that they can put you on that master list so that you're self-excluded from everything. You can do that. Just write it down. Think about some ways that you can do that. All right, friends. Well, next week we're going to be talking about, again, obsessions, collections, hoarding, and coveting. So that should be a good episode. I'm going to tie it into OCD a little bit, but it's really going to be more about what are the things that we
collect in our lives that may contribute to thoughts of gambling, or may sit on the fringe of that OCD, or may just be coveting and cause our minds and our spirits to wander in the direction of wanting more and not being content with what we have. So, thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a great weekend. I will see you next Sunday.
Like holy water, like salt on a bird, rain in a drought. It's all